Hello, welcome to episode 22 of the Snowboard Instructor Podcast. In this episode, we have Becky Malthouse, who is an amazing ski and snowboard instructor, as well as a trainer for BASI. We talked to her about when she strapped on a board for the first time, how her creative mind was a factor in changing the snowboard instructing industry within BASI and Interski, and when she joined the Bass Ski School in Morzine. This episode is brought to you by the National Snow Show, a UK-based event at the NEC in Birmingham. It is held on the 23rd to the 24th of October, so if you'd like anything ski or snowboard related and want to update yourself on the new gear and happenings within the industry, then come on down. For a limited time, we are giving away 100 free tickets for this amazing event. So just use the code INSTRUCTORPOD when clicking the link in the description below. Hope you have a fun time listening to this episode, and see you in the next one. Amazing. Right, so I think we want to kind of get off the first question. When did you start snowboarding? When did you start skiing? What was your first lesson and where did you kind of set that off?
I skied before I snowboarded. I think when I started skiing, it's around 79. So snowboarding was just being tried by a few brave souls, I think, back in the day, who were probably tying straps to their surfboards at that point. And it came about through friends that we'd met in France from summer holiday, lived in the Jura Mountains. So we went to visit them during the winter and tried a bit of cross-country skiing. And slowly things went from, we eventually turned into downhill. But I mean, very quickly I started skiing on a dry slope, which is pretty much where most of my skiing happened at that point. I mean, it's such an expensive sport. It's not very accessible. So dry slope was perfect because it was, just down the road. I could go every week. I could get involved. And that's really where I started as a kid at about 12.
Nice. Which dry slope was that?
I was at Whalley in Brentwood, Essex.
Yeah. God, that's small. That's a small dry slope.
Yeah, well, it's bigger now than it used to. So where the main slope is, and then it goes all the way down into the trees. It used to stop after that first bit. And we had one of those cable tows with handles on it.
Oh, so yeah. I know what you're on about.
Grab handle and water ski way up. I think that's why when I first tried to water ski, I could do it. So I was used to holding on to handles. So it's now big compared to what it was. But as a kid, I think I would just do anything to go sliding.
It was that good. I mean, how was the community in Brentwood anyway? Was it quite good when you first did skiing there?
Yeah. I'm sort of 12, 13, 14, that age, you're trying to find where you fit in the world. And for me, school and the people who are around me there didn't like doing the sort of stuff that I like doing. So to find these people who like something like skiing was amazing. And it became my community. It became the place where I belonged. And people from right back then have been really instrumental in me ending up where I am now. So yeah, it was huge. It was huge for me as a kid.
So how was that first lesson when you went skiing? How did that go? Do you remember anything vividly, or was it just kind of something passing?
Honestly, no, not a lot. When I first downhill skied, it would have been a big group lesson. And I think I can't even remember if the first trip was in Italy or in France. But I always remember being either the smallest or the youngest in the group. So probably getting a little bit spoiled. But it was I just presumed that I was going to be able to do it. There was nothing in it that made me think this is going to be hard or difficult. And so it was always a really positive experience.
So after those couple of lessons, how did you find skiing? Did you just kind of just go to the dry slope like every week or as much as you can, and then just skied and just try to get better and just have fun whilst doing it? Yeah.
So I think one of the big things, once you can actually get from A to B, it was then about joining the club. And then you get that community of people who go, oh, you should try skiing on this ski, or, and start to get your own equipment and start doing a bit of race training and join the race club. So then we're traveling up and down the country to loads of different dry slopes, racing, and eventually even dry slope skiing wasn't cheap. So very quickly I ended up sort of working in the ski hire at the ski slope,
Nice.
which then paid for all my skiing. So you're handing out smelly boots and skis and stuff to people. So I'd have been doing that from probably age 14, 15, which then paid for my skiing. And then another route into, I guess, I don't even remember this as a conscious decision, but I started doing the ASSI, the Artificial Ski Slope Instructor course. So whatever the ski qualifications were called back then. And that, again, helped pay for my skiing on the dry slope. So an hour taught, it was better than being in the boot room anyway.
Yeah.
And I started doing that when I was about 15, 16. So started teaching back at that point and just very quickly realized that I could do it.
Makes sense. And how did you find the instructing course itself, if you can remember that like artificial course? Because I don't think I've ever really looked into like artificial kind of snow slope courses. I know.
Well,
is it very
if you
similar?
think that era, that's all there was. There was no snow dome.
Compared to like the things now, is it different? Yeah. How different is it compared to like say the ski level one? If you remember,
it was very different. The process back then was all about learning a series of maneuvers, and you have to teach your beginners how to get through that series of maneuvers because that leads on to the next maneuver. And I don't think I had a really deep understanding of why they were doing that maneuver, but you didn't really need that to get through the tests. You just had to be able to communicate, speak, be understood, manage a group, and tell them the maneuvers. Now we do a snowplow because we do. Yeah, quite simple.
So carry on. How did you find those like working as an instructor at your local snow slope? Well, dry slope.
I loved it. I was quite conscious that I was quite young, so teaching adults, you had to not put on a facade. That's not the right thing, but you had to fake it till you make it, almost, in terms of confidence of standing out in front of a group and taking charge of their safety and taking charge of their learning. But I enjoyed it. I found it challenging, and I found it a creative process as well. You know, trying to, even back then, I think I was trying to find out for each person what it was that was going to help that particular person. And that's never changed, actually. That bit of it's never changed.
So what happened after then, after you did?
Well, yes, it's always a series of events, isn't it?
Yeah.
I had a BASI instructor called Dave Peake, who had been working out in the Alps, and he came back, and I was working full time at the dry slope by this point. So I must be 18 going on 19. And he came back and said, whoa, why don't you go and do your BASI course? I was like, what's that? And that triggered that whole BASI thing. So we'd got to about 1985 by this point. And I went and did my very first BASI course, which was a ski instructor course. And loved it. At that point, I'd only ever skied for about 6 weeks on snow. All of the stuff I'd done was on dry slope. So all of the teaching stuff, and I've been teaching for loads as well. So all the teaching stuff, all the technical stuff, I was really, really good at. As soon as it became anything open hill or bumps or slushy snow, I was like, what is this? I very quickly realised where my strengths and weaknesses were. And the other thing that was really good about that course, this was in Solden in Austria in the summer, was that BASI's then Interski team were training for the next Interski Congress. And I remember watching this team of people train together, and the camaraderie and the banter, everything went into being part of that team. I was like, I'd love to be part of that. That's something that was really inspiring to me. And then I did that course, passed, and got offered jobs, and everything just rolled from there.
So how was that ski level 1? It's mainly, I just want to know how that everything's kind of changed from that. Do you still remember the criteria and what it was like into detail?
Yeah. Do you know what? I don't remember the criteria specifically, because I think when you go through the first course, I don't think you understand it very well. And don't forget, back in the day, the numbers were all the other way around.
3, 2, 1.
I used to start with grade 3, then 2, then 1. And the training and assessment was split. So you do a 2-week training course followed by a 1-week assessment. But anyway, that's by the by. In today's language, we're talking, I was doing the level 1. Criteria.
Do you know?
Not a clue.
Yeah, don't blame you. I'm just assuming it's honestly sort of the same, but less developed as it is now.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of content, there was less about how learners learn and more about techniques. So here are the series of techniques that you learn. This is the progression for this. This is the progression for that. Can you do them? Can you explain them? Can you teach them? That's it. BASI, a few years later, went through a real evolution where it changed its whole process from a techniques-based system to a skills-based system. And that's where we introduced the family of fundamental elements. So we start teaching people the ingredients of skiing, and we started to then teach people how to put them together to cope with different situations. But yeah, that's later on.
So before we do move on to kind of you moving up into the BASI system, I do want to talk about the first time you snowboarded, which was, of course, a bit before that. Do tell me the story of the first time you snowboarded for us.
So I carried on skiing and I went to work in Scotland. I did seasons in Scotland. And then in the summers, I was really lucky again and ended up working in a water sports centre. So I was then coaching and teaching water skiing and stuff. So that was working really well. And then I ended up, it's a long story, but I ended up working in Italy for a season in a resort called Livigno. And I hadn't finished all my BASI exams by then. And I was working with Italians and Argentinians. So a lot of Argentinians have dual passports. So they go and work in Italy in the winter, and then in our summer, go down to Argentina. And I had this brilliantly mad friend called Miriam, and she had a snowboard. And I was like, what is that? So at the end of my very first season there, I had a go at this snowboard. So it was hard boots, not even, just my ski boots, basically. And I remember Andy Jerram talking to you about this. Not even snowboard hard boots, but ski boots. Click on out things. And the board was pretty square, if I remember correctly. And what I loved about it was that I couldn't do it. I loved the fact that it was so new, so alien. For a skier, any other type of skiing you have a go at, you take a lot of your transferable skills too. So whether it's cross country, telemark, touring, any type of skiing, you take skiing skills with you. I had nothing, absolutely nothing, apart from my mad Argentinian friends screaming at me. So I loved it and I was getting my way around and it was all fine. And then I fell and put my arm in plaster. Came back to the UK and went and bought the first snowboard that I could find.
Do you remember what snowboard that was? Is that a vivid memory?
I did, because I'd written it down in my press book, and it was, I wrote it down.
Oh, but was it a hard boot or was it a soft boot? Or
No, it was hard. It was
hard
a
boot.
Mistral, the 155 Mistral. I didn't have any boots at that point.
Yeah, it's just kind of
Mistral for a windsurf brand.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Who would have thought they would?
That didn't last long.
No.
No, I haven't heard of them, so that means like they haven't transitioned today.
Oh, I think they died a death back then. So that was, when was that? That was about 1990. And I hadn't quite finished my BASI then. I didn't finish my level 4 until 91. So it was before I'd finished my instructor stuff.
With the hard boot, did you have it like classic free ride positive angle bindings where it's like that, your back foot proper turned in for like slalom? Yeah.
Positive and then some.
Yeah.
So it's like
I can't remember. It was actually in my press book and I did look at it and I can't remember, but I did write it down. But yeah, it was a lot.
Yeah,
it was like that.
Yeah, it's super cool. Me and Alec, we've got our hard boot setups, and to be fair, we need to start riding them back in the snow day.
Yeah.
But they are super fun. Like, they're great.
I honestly, if I put hard boots on now, I would properly struggle because it's so alien to just stand so differently. It does feel almost like a hybrid between skiing and snowboarding. I mean, it's not, but
it's not, but it is in a way.
Yeah, it took me a while because I was so used to the classic BASI centric kind of bot pose where it was pretty kind of formal. Whereas with the hard boot, I was not used to being that open with it and that kind of driven with it, and it was definitely something to get used to, but it was such a super fun learning curve to kind of get round. Mate, you should have seen Joe Dibb go on it. It was hilarious.
He went on my hard boot and it was like the best thing ever.
How did you not film that?
To be fair, we should have.
I think I did. I'll have to send you the video later. But it's just him struggling.
I can use that as evidence against him, Dylan.
Oh, it's great. Honestly, it was hilarious. He was just still trying because, like, he wasn't the best. He just couldn't snowboard at all anyway. So just chucking him on a hard boot as well was just the best thing in the world.
Okay, if you picture that, that's probably how I felt when I first put a snowboard on.
Nice, that sort of idea.
Yeah.
He got up to like how far did he get up to?
He got up to
like 3 or 4 meters and then just called it. And just couldn't like stand up on it. It was the best thing ever, to be fair.
Oh, do you know? I do remember from that the energy. I remember the snow being really soft as well, and just veering off the side of the piste and ending up in really deep snow, and just that brutal agony of trying to stand up, because of course in hard boots you can't bend your ankles at all. Yeah.
So going from, let's say you've put your arm in that cast, how long did it take to kind of get better and heal? How bad was that injury from that?
That was my elbow, which I still bear the lump today. It was put in a half cast. I went back to the UK. 6 weeks later, I went and had it taken up, and I went to a physio. Don't know why I went to a physio, not that doctors aren't, physios aren't proper people, but just a doctor. And honestly, it was black, blue, yellow. And it turns out that I'd broken the end on my humerus.
Yeah.
So it didn't quite straighten it. You remember I was saying I was doing summers in a water ski centre? The first time it properly straightened when I was behind a boat and getting pulled out, and I went, "Oh, that's straight then." But that was quite a long fix. But then going out the following winter, I was going on my next training course for my next BASI course, which is where I met a guy called Neil McNabb, who you may know from snowboarding history. Neil very quickly decided that the Mistral was not going to cut it, so we went and bought new boards.
Nice.
Got myself onto a nine-decker.
Yay, nice. That's cool. I do want to, before we kind of move on to like the proper snowboarding stuff, I do want to kind of move on to the qualifications, just with your ski qualifications. And kind of going through that. Mainly, of course, just tell us the story going from that level 2 to the level 4 qualification in BASI.
I found most of it a really positive experience. And I think it's because I'd got myself into the right place. So from that first job offer, I went to work for Carbridge Ski School in Scotland. So I was in Aviemore. And the way it kind of worked was you would learn on the job. So every day when we finished teaching, we would get together. We would either go and ski together as a group of instructors, or one of our senior instructors would run a training session. And it was a really supportive place to go. The other thing that we had was funding from the Highlands and Islands Development Board, which meant that it made it really affordable to do the courses. So I guess Scotland being the home of BASI, there were lots of BASI trainers around us. We were really clear and aware of what the levels were. We were getting lots of teaching experience as well as we went through the system. So we were growing as instructors as we were getting better at skiing. And I think that's just invaluable. You can't work your way through instructor exams without developing as an instructor. So I took a season in between each of my levels. So I started in 85 and finished in 91. So I finished my level 4 in 1991. And that was before the speed test or anything, the Euro test was part of the system. So I never had to specifically train to do that. Yeah. I think one of the reasons I felt it was a positive experience was that I was successful at each of the levels. And I think that was only because I was clear about what I needed to achieve going through and going into each level. So I was well prepared.
Yeah. So let's talk about the level 2 then. How did you find that? Was it, of course, going into something like the level 2 and that kind of the first time of having an improved difficulty with everything? How did you kind of take that on board?
I honestly, again, we're talking because it's such a long time ago, I don't have a clear memory of how difficult it got as I went through the system, because I was getting better as I went through the system. There is something that I remember quite clearly, though. I remember thinking, great, okay, this course, this is going to be the one where they tell me all the secrets. Right, no, I didn't get any of the secrets, but I must be on the next one. And you work your way towards this great big thing, which is the level 4. And you think, you know what, it's going to be this one. They're keeping it all to the level 4 out there. They're going to give us the gold when we get the secrets. And you come out the other side and go, but there are no secrets. They give you the bare bones. You then have to figure out how to make it work. Yeah, they give you the framework. And this was still at the time when it was all about a series of techniques. So I always remember being slightly deflated coming out of the exams.
Yeah, expecting like a golden goose or something and being like,
yeah.
There's nothing there. I sort of, yeah. I think when it was like doing the level 1, I remember, is it like the level 3 snowboarding where we talk a bit more about advanced sort of techniques and stuff?
Yeah.
And then as I finished my level 2, started thinking like, there's not really much past this.
Yeah, because level 2 only takes you up to the central theme and not really any big riding stuff. And then even in the next level 3 and 4, I just assume that looking at the criteria and stuff, it's just going to be like, yeah, it's sort of the same stuff, but you're just, you know, just adding on to what you've already learned. But there's no like hidden secrets there. There's no like this really, really secret advanced technique that is going to make you a really sick instructor at riding. It's just sort of the same jargon, but better, and just a bit more of it and more, you know, more in depth. Yeah. And actually where the magic happens or where the secrets are told is the environment that you put yourself in. So if you're It's your instructors' community. It's the people you work alongside. It's the people who you might train with. It's somebody who gets out of the lesson and turns around and said, hey, do you know what? I had to go at this today, and I was really surprised because this happened, and then those conversations, that's where it all
that's where it all expands. Like after the snowboarding, bit of coffee together, and then you're just talking from there, and that's always like the best.
Yeah,
moving on,
it's your instructors community, which is your strength.
Yeah. Yeah, moving on to the level 3 and 4 then, was there any other kind of standout moments that you had there that you can remember?
It's funny. I remember on the teaching part of the level 4, and obviously we're still talking about skiing, so we used to have this stuff called step turns, where instead of bringing both skis through the turn at the same time, you would put one ski into the turn and then the next one. And there are lots of different varieties of it. So, for example, if your skis are parallel and you step up the hill parallel and then you step the other one up, you can use it to focus on changing weight earlier. You can use it to clear transition from one edge to the next. You can use it to, and did my little teaching thing, and the 2 trainers, because you have 2 trainers on exams, not just one. And they bring you aside and they ask you loads of questions, and they say, so why would you teach step turns? Oh, right, okay. And all, list out all the reasons why I might use it in a lesson. And then they're just wanting more and more and more. And I really am out of ideas by this point. And then they said, well, what would you do if you're skiing towards a pylon? I was like, I'm sorry. I think I'd turn and go the other way. Or you probably just say I'd turn around it. Yes, little moments like that do stick in your head. And I also remember on the level 4 technical, so up in Scotland, the Corrie Keist is one of the back corries, and it's really well known for big bumps, like really bumps where someone my height would appear, disappear. And I knew that a lot of the skiing was going to be in those bumps. And we'd done the training week the week before. So we did a training week, weekend off, and then into the assessment week. And I'd been skiing great through the training week. I was really happy, took a day off, went up the next day. I couldn't ski. I couldn't get down. I couldn't get from A to B. Just my head just went boom. And I remember feeling so despondent because I thought, I can't do this. That all disappeared on Monday for some reason, but that was just a crumbling under pressure, I think.
Was it just because you just couldn't think of it? You basically could just spent all that time and it was just exhaustion.
I think it was part of it, but that's why I've been quite deliberate about having a day off the hill and a day when I didn't go up. And whatever it was, I wasn't at that point really good at controlling my head and controlling the things that I had control of and letting everything else get on with it. I'd obviously got myself to a point where I was worried or anxious about it. And that just absolutely destroys performance. So if something goes on in your head that is destructive, you don't just get a little bit not as good as you normally are. You have a total system failure.
Like you just have a mental barrier just like there, and you can't overdo it until you get just more relaxed and you get, you rejuvenate yourself.
Yeah, and I tell you what, the one thing that I noticed the difference between then and now is we had so much fun on BASI courses. So much fun. I mean, I would laugh till I cried on those courses because of the people. And there was a lot of pressure, but our way of dealing with pressure, and maybe it was just a bit more acceptable, was just to, I don't know, just loon our way through it. That's not so much. We do have fun on courses. People do have fun on courses, but there's a much bigger element of stress and pressure and
I mean, that sounds like such a British thing to do anyway. Like, in When in Doubt, when it's so stressful or so pressure, you just make a joke out of it and just like laugh it off.
Yeah. And for me, that puts me in a much better headspace than worrying about something. Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, and how did you feel like when you finished that level 4 and I'm guessing you were just like over the moon over it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's, you just think, done.
Yeah.
Done. Done. That's it. You go and have, at that time, you would do the written paper, you'd do that, and then you would go and have an interview with a panel of trainers. I think it was 3 or 4 trainers, maybe 3. And yes, because at level 4, oh, that's right, you were actually assessed in front of 3 trainers, 2 for all the other levels and 3 for level 4. And he then went for interview with them, and I can't even remember what they asked me, but I really clearly remember them saying, "That's great, well done. We think that you should move forward towards or work towards becoming a trainer because we need more girls." I was like, because you need girls or because you think I'm capable? I wasn't sure which message I was getting. And because I'd started to snowboard, I then walked away from skiing. I didn't have that motivation. And I think also because I was working in Italy by then, and we would work 8 hours a day, from 9 till 5. You grab your sandwich on the lift. And I think I'd got to the point I was so totally burnt out. I didn't know where else to go forwards. And that's why it was so good that snowboarding had landed in my lap just at the right time. Just at the time for me to go, this is where I go next. This is what I do next.
And after kind of that initial kind of burnout, that diversion, you kind of went into like nation cups and like champ snowboarding, right? Like, was that the start of the competition? Like, I actually want to kind of know what those competitions were about and what it entailed.
So there was a catalyst to this. I wasn't a natural competitor. I didn't have any deep experience as a ski racer. It was only really a bit of dry slope club racing. So competing and racing wasn't really, I wasn't desperate to go and do that. At the beginning of 91, was when I met Neil McNabb, which is when I ditched my own Mistral board, and Neil was already a really good snowboarder. So I learned on his tails pretty much. I was like, okay, we're going there. And he was really keen to compete. So in Italy, where we were at that time, we did loads of local competitions. This was all racing at this point, sort of slalom and giant slalom. And between us, I kind of, because he was going, I did it. And then I realized that I quite liked it and I was actually all right at it. And we then committed to going to Andorra in the spring of 92 to the British Champs, which was a 3-day camel hike from Livigno to Andorra. It took us forever. And that was the first time that we'd met any other British snowboarders, really. And that was a wake-up call.
Where was it held in Andorra?
It was in what? Not Soldeo. It was on the French side of Soldeo.
Altata.
Pas de la Casa.
Hey.
Pas de la Casa.
Yeah.
Very aware of that.
Vivid memories.
There you go.
Memories of that slope.
Not close to anywhere, really, is it?
No. It's sort of on its own, but it's sort of entangled with Soldeo.
Yeah. So I remember we turned up to this thing, And we did have soft boots by this point. Still quite mastered the whole soft boot thing. I've just found it all a bit wobbly. And we turned up to this thing, and they had a slalom, a giant slalom, and a half pipe, which, to be fair, it was a bit more like a ditch than a half pipe.
Yeah.
But, you know. And most of the people in the UK scene at that point had kind of come from skating. There weren't really many people that had come from skiing. So as people with a skiing background, we had such an advantage in terms of we knew how edges worked. We were more precise. So in the, I won the slalom by about 10 seconds.
Whoa, yes, Bex.
Sick.
It was like, whoa, okay. And we've been racing like, on snow over in Italy with people like Gaia De Beni and people who were already on the world stage. So I think we'd had way more exposure than anybody else. And that was it. From walking into this town where no one knew you, suddenly everyone sort of knew who you were. And honestly, I couldn't put a number of how many people were there. But pretty much everybody in the UK that was keen on snowboarding, because people go for fun. People go for the week of snowboarding. It wasn't just about the competition. And everything kicked off from that point forwards. I do remember Jeremy Sladen was the first person that actually stopped and spoke to us and sort of started introducing us to a few people. And a guy called Johnny Weeks was chatting with us, and he was like, okay, so, how do you fancy riding for a team like Burton? I was like, wow, who would I speak to about that? Well, me. Okay, then. Deal. Everything just fired from that point.
I mean, how many autographs did you sign when you were out there in Andorra after winning? Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Everybody's such a big family. It's like you're only as famous as the person next to you.
Yeah.
It's just prize giving on that week. So this was all being run by the BSA, the British Snowboard Association. They were everything snowboard in the UK at that time. And Eddie Spearing, who was master of ceremonies, I remember him coming to me at the prize giving saying, Bex, got a bit of a problem. We're short of a trophy. And I think it was maybe for one of the junior sections or something. You've got a few. Do you mind if I just borrow one of yours to give to someone else?
Yeah, go for it, yeah.
Yeah, easy come, go.
That's
so it was shambolic, but wonderful at the same time.
And kind of actually, that's a great segue to actually the BSA itself.
Yeah.
And, after doing those kind of competitions, you did a BSA course, snowboard course.
Yeah.
How was that?
I carried on competing at that point, and I then worked my way on to World Cup. So the World Cup competitions were run by the ISF, the International Snowboard Federation. It wasn't part of FIS, and it wasn't part of the Olympics at this point. It was completely its own independent sport. So I carried on competing and was basically, after that season, trained in Les Deux Alpes for the summer, went to Argentina while I was still with Burton, did Pro Series racing there. Pretty much turned pro at that point. Like I wasn't teaching, I wasn't skiing, I wasn't doing any of that. I was just riding. And I was riding, which developed then into sort of border cross and a bit more pipe riding. So for me, everything I've ever done, I'm a little bit of a jack of all trades. So I would enter the overall in stuff. I'd enter pipe, World Championships, I'd ride pipe, GS, slalom, Super G, and get overall, like an overall result, as well as a specialist.
Jack of all trades and that jazz.
Absolutely. A little bit of everything. So I'd been doing that from 92. When was it? About about 3-4 years. So I was really quite deep in my experience, and I'd already finished my BASI at that point. I hadn't been involved with BASI for a while at that point, and they then approached both me and Neil, and they were then interested in providing a BASI pathway, or providing a pathway for snowboarding in the UK. The BSA, the British Snowboarding Association, was set up in 1988, and they had started delivering snowboard instructor courses, which they had got the course syllabus and content from the Austrians. It was the VOS system, and they'd given us permission to run these courses. And that was the only on-snow offering at that time. So what happened was BASI asked Neil and myself to go and do that course and see what we thought. So having the experience of both being ski level 4s and the technical experience we had with the snowboard disciplines, what did we think? So it was about 95 by this point. We went off and did the course, and this was in Avoriaz. It hugely interesting, mostly because you could see that it was a borrowed system, and nobody really knew why we were doing stuff. So I was told, for example, in stance and posture, I was told that what you need to do is put your elbows in like this and put your hands out. Okay, why? Because that's what you do. Okay, so what would happen if I just put my hands out like that? Yeah, no, you don't do that. And I was like, yeah, there's got to be a better reason. There's got to be a better reason than that. And they were teaching us to teach. So if you're across the hill and you want to turn, what you need to do is turn your head, and that will make you turn. So I'd be standing on the hill and I'd go, I'm not turning. And I could, Neil was in one group and I was in the other. And I could see, and I knew all the people who were leading the course really well. And I could see them going, stop being difficult. I was like, but that's not causing me to turn. You've just told me that will cause me to turn, and it doesn't. He said, well, try moving your shoulders. This went on. Try moving your shoulders. I was like, yeah, no, still not turning. So we were going through this process, and they were frustrated because they didn't understand why I was questioning it. But I was questioning it because you are not telling me what I need, what fundamentally needs to happen to make this board work. You're giving me good teaching tips. These things will be useful when I'm teaching people. It might help them. So when we came out of it, our opinion was that that course would need an awful lot of development to truly be something that I think was going to work. So BASI then agreed to collaborate with the BSA and create a new joint course. And that's how BASI first got involved with the snowboard pathway.
Oh, yeah. No way. It seemed so good to have you guys on that course. Yeah. Because
it was lucky. Yeah. It was insightful of BASI to make that decision. It was insightful of them not just to go, oh, we're just going to do our own thing. They went and found out what was going on. They asked people's opinion. They asked the right people because they were the only people in the UK that had that dual experience of teaching and performing. We were the only two people that had ever done both of those fields to the top level.
And how did BASI take a load away from that course as well? I mean, the BSA clearly was starting to go on a low down at that point. Did they what happened with the BSA actually? Did they merge with BASI, or was that
actually, you know what? It's interesting. Funny you should ask that, because I'm not completely sure. The BSA continued to be the main body for snowboard competition, all the way up to snowboarding, I think, becoming part of the Olympics and falling under the FIS banner, so the International Ski Federation, which it had to do. So the ISF, the International Ski Snowboard Federation, ceased existing, and I don't know exactly when the BSA folded, but when competition fell under FIS, and then instructing finally, after a collaboration for a while where we ran joint courses. So if you're a member of the BSA, you could sign up and do the course. If you're a member of BASI, you could sign up and do the course. At whatever point when the BSA sort of wound down, BASI carried on and ran with it. But then there was a really interesting process about how we started to create this new course, because we decided that course wasn't good enough. We wanted something better. So the BSA put forward, I think, maybe a group of 5 people, and BASI put forward a group of 5 people, and they sent them to team for a week and said, create.
Yeah, figure
make
it out,
something.
Yeah. And so that moved into, you know, the first kind of instructing syllabus for snowboarding, yes. Right? So,
yeah,
I mean...
Well, two things came out that week. One was, we went through all the discussions. So if turning my head doesn't make the board turn, what makes the board turn? What fundamentally has to happen? Which is when we started to come up with we first came up with the idea of, well, it has to start from the board. The board has to make an action against the snow. The first thing that I'm connected to is my feet, pedaling. So if I stand on my board, if I'm on my heel edge, if I'm left foot forwards, left hand, and I start to pedal down on that foot, then I release the edge on that end of the board, so the board will have its torsional flex. If that end of the board is no longer gripping onto the mountain, it'll start to go that way. So if I make that my very first movement, I can create a turn. So then it has to work from the feet upwards. It has to work from the board upwards. What do I want the board to do? How can I manipulate the board to change edge, twist, grip, slide, do all of these things? And then the rest of my body can just be in charge of trying to stay in balance while I do that mechanical thing.
That's super interesting. Yeah. It's quite funny how, like, you know, the BSA thought, like, going from, oh yeah, the heads does exactly does the turning. Clearly that's come from like a surfing and skateboarding standpoint. Of course, that was like the origin of like so that's how they thought it worked there. And then you guys came in, I was like, actually no.
And just because we had basically in the beginning trained ourselves, and by going through the instructor's system, and it doesn't matter whose system it was, the fact that it was BASI, but my mind was always going, I want to get from here to there in the most effective and efficient way possible. What's happening? So my brain is quite analytical. I'll try and work things out. And that's what we did. We just tried to figure it out. So then we had the process of, so this is working within a group of 10. So we've 10 people essentially have got to come to the same conclusion. So for me, it was very much about selling this idea of, this is what I believe, and I need to make you believe it, because I believe it so strongly that I want it to go this way. So the other thing that came out of that week was, who amongst this group of 10 do we think are good enough to actually deliver this syllabus that we're creating? And we did that through a self-selection, pretty much. There wasn't anybody to look at us and make that decision. So we voted on each other. Everybody in the group put everybody, including themselves, and ranked the order of who they thought was capable or not capable of running the course, best to worst. amazingly honest process. Everybody pretty much agreed. There was nobody who put themselves at the top of the list where 9 other people had put them at the bottom. And I can't remember how many people we took from that, but that was our first core group of trainers. And clearly there was the only girl. That was always a bit of a given.
Yeah.
Always a bit of a given.
So in terms of the syllabus as well, do you remember anything else from that syllabus that you kind of converted into?
Yeah, one of the key things that we needed to do was create a structure for a course. And I was really aware that the ski instructors had their structure. So do I go and reinvent the wheel, or do I see if there are things that I can steal from that structure? So the fundamental elements were already in existence by this point. So BASI had gone through its transition from here's a list of techniques to the skills-based system. So we had our fundamental elements. So I needed to look at those and see whether snowboarding had different stuff or whether we could use those labels. The only one I really struggled with was rotation. So edging was pretty much the same. A board will either edge or not edge, and it can edge at different rates through its length. But fundamentally, it's either on its edge or it's not on its edge. Pressure works the same in terms of I can move fore and aft along the board. Pressure will increase. So, for example, if I'm riding into the back of a bump or into the back of a kicker, as I start to hit something that's an upslope, pressure will increase. Pressure increases and decreases through the turn, depending on how much I rotate or edge board. So all of those things were working really similarly. The one thing that was really difficult was rotary. So I've got different things happening to the board to make it turn, to make it have rotation. But of course, as snowboarders, we talk about the body and how it's rotated. Skiers are much more often, they do change how the body rotates.
Yes. Yeah.
Against skiing, but it works so differently because the way the body's stacked differently, because the way it stands. So that needed a little bit more finessing, but ultimately I decided that that list of elements, what the board does and how the body enables it to do its stuff, is similar enough that we can use that structure. And that's essentially what I did. I took the Alpine manual and I translated it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And that's where we started.
So in that sort of way, it's just you are looking at that end and you just put in a lot of, but sort of same wording, but making it different descriptions in that.
Yeah, you have to change the mechanics because, of course, as soon as you talk about anything to do with the body's moving in a completely different way. And we've also got the lack of symmetry of the body is moving differently on its toe edge than it is on the heel edge. So we've got a massive lack of symmetry between one turn and the other.
I think that helps so massively as well, because if you've got people nowadays that are transitioning from, let's say they're a level 2 snowboarder and they're transitioning to be doing a level 1 ski, they've got the fundamentals, they got the wording there to be like, okay, it's the same wording, but it's just different mechanics in that sort of sense. Even though like you could say pressure and edging is the same sort of thing on a ski and a snowboard, it's just that rotatory movement on a ski is different to snowboard.
And actually,
that's awesome.
Rotary is a really ski instructor, is a real instructor word. If I want to talk about rotary, I'll more often use the word turn or point it the way you want.
We use pivot quite a lot.
Huh?
Pivot quite a lot is quite a known one that we use.
Yes. Again, that's a very American word in terms of instructing. They use pivot quite a lot. But pivot is pivoting around a point. So you have to have a fulcrum, you have to have a point for something to pivot around, and very little you do in either of those snow sports are actually about pivoting, unless you're just doing that.
Unless you're doing like a braquage turn or something, which even then, that's
even
not
then,
as, it's more.
As soon as you involve the edge, you stop pivoting because So language can be your friend, but it can be your enemy as well, because using the right language gets your point across accurately, and using inaccurate language, or even if you use the right language, people's perception of it can take them off into places.
So, for example, you could say pivoting to someone, and then they'll go, "Oh yeah, I'm pivoting," and then they'll just like kick out their back foot, and they're like, "Oh no, I am pivoting. I'm saying the one end," but I'm just like, they're just throwing themselves like doing counter-rotating movements, and they're not wrong, because they are still pivoting in that sort of sense of what they learn in high school, but it's not what you want them to do.
Yeah, so we have this shared language as instructors, and a lot of it is very similar between ski and snowboard. And there have been loads of developments since that point. So there might be words now that are in the snowboard material that I'm not using, but that's how things should be. But then there's also the language that we use with clients and learners. We have a much more user-friendly language.
Yeah.
But there is a shared, understood language that we have between us.
Which is awesome, because I'm doing like this my ski one, like working my way up to do my ski one, and Rich is like, helping me out and getting my skiing better, and he's just telling me the language, but because I already know what he's talking about, I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. So for example, we want to like round out that turn a bit. For example, if you have to say that to someone, you have to explain, rounding out isn't just that sort of thing. You have to explain what does it mean and go through that. But because I know what he meant by rounding out the turn, I'm like, okay, that's what we need to do. And it's just so much easier, and it is a big help getting that sort of sense.
And actually, if you're trying to make short turns and you're finding that the tails are just sliding out from you, you can see that in a snowboarder who's too much weight on the front foot, hasn't engaged the back of the board through the end of the turn, and the tail just washes out. The same thing is happening to the equipment. You've just got different body mechanics to change it.
Same but different.
So you start to see more similarities than difference.
And it's fun. It's hella fun.
It is really geeky, but it's so much fun.
We love being geeky, don't we?
That's so awesome. I feel like, oh, yeah.
So good.
Sorry, go on.
That's all right. So at the end of the syllabus itself, and you've just created this kind of structure that can be moved ahead. What happened after that?
Sorry, say that again. I didn't quite get it.
So after moving from that syllabus, and you've got that, like, you've got a grounded goal, you've got a grounded structure that's happened.
Yeah.
Where did you guys move from that? Did you kind of move on to thinking about higher levels and how you could recreate that, or what happened kind of after that?
We knew that we needed a deeper base of trainers. So it was then a case of getting people through that first course. And I remember running one course that was obviously a joint course, another course then in 96 or 97, but very quickly and at that time, people were coming onto the course that weren't good riders. They weren't actually safe going from A to B. I can't even tell you how scary some of it was. So not only did we have nobody knew what to expect going into those courses. So we had a massive range of abilities. And we also had people who did have quite a good background in snowboarding, but because there had never been any coaching and nobody had really thought about it in terms of work from the feet first, this was new to everybody. And a lot of people, it really sort of smacked them in the head and went, whoa. So there was nobody coming onto the course who'd been taught like that. So we were creating a new generation of riders. So we very quickly, I think within a couple of years, we ran a trainer selection because we were going to need more people to bring into that level. I'm just trying to think who might have come through at that point. I'm not quite sure. Gone a bit fuzzy, but you're right. We had to, at some point, bring in different levels. So there would have been a level 1, level 2. I'm guessing, and this is really bad because I was there at the time, but I'm guessing the level 1 and level 2, we did there and then in that first bout. And then we had to create a level 3.
I mean, how was the feedback on that actually then? Just kind of talking about like, people who did the experience the first course for the first time, like what was the feedback that you got from that?
All really positive, because most people were coming through had been self-taught or had been taught by that old system of do that to make you turn. So most people found it a complete revelation. Yeah, it was that. It was huge. It was huge.
What was it? With the leveling system, you said you're going into the 3, but with the 1 and the 2, with the 1, was it still like kind of the 1 is what the 2 is now, if that makes sense? And then you put...
No, I think we would have started with a level 1 and then quickly put a level 2 off the back of it. And they would have been based roughly around where they are now. They didn't have much of a freestyle element, although everyone was expected to ride fakie, switch as much as forwards and more as they went through the levels. There wasn't any park element specifically, but then we didn't have parks. You couldn't guarantee the courses was going to run in places where you had parks. And we had, in terms of terrain, we would take riders into bumps, into off-piste, into cut-up stuff. And bumps, not specifically because we thought snowboarders should be able to ride bumps. It was to challenge and make people as versatile as possible. Like on a snowboard, I don't want to go and ride bumps. But if I'm stuck at the top of a bumps field, I don't want to start to feel like a right lemon because I don't know how to get down it. My riding needs to be good enough that I can deal with all of those different terrains.
So how did you kind of start thinking about those like advanced kind of techniques and skills, and how did that kind of start to kind of really blossom the level 3 stuff?
Yes, it would have been a combination of 2 things. It would have been the technical riding, but also the development of the teaching knowledge. So there was a whole there's a wealth of information about learning about learners and learning about, or knowledge to have about the learning process. And we were missing that. So the level 3 gave us the opportunity to do higher level riding, steeper, more carvy stuff. Because even now you'll see level 2 is still pretty basic, beginner, low, intermediate stuff. So to get into some performance riding and to be able to delve deeper on the teaching knowledge stuff. And that was taken directly from the skiers' content. And that was part of the stuff that I really enjoyed. And when I first got introduced to that, it rang so many bells. So a learner-centered teaching model and teaching styles and learning styles and all these things that were given labels. I suddenly realized that they were fitting into the teaching I was doing, but I just never had any names for them. So I found it fascinating. And this is all taken from academia and from teaching, as opposed from snow sports teaching. So the skiers took it from academia, applied it to skiing, And we just nicked it off them and applied it to snowboarding because it's about teaching and learning as opposed to specifically about sport. And I'm pretty sure that what would have happened is we would have ran the first pilot level 3 course and potentially used that as a trainer selection, or use that then to invite a pool of people towards a trainer selection. Not too sure about the order, but that sounds like the sort of thing that would happen.
And how did you find the process of kind of creating that level 3? Because there must have been a lot of stuff you had to really think about, like you were saying, especially more of that technical side and really figuring out what would be the most efficient way to kind of go down, like variables, for instance, or steeps. And, you know.
Don't forget, I'd raced on World Cup for 4 years. So it was kind of in my bones. It was just doing that stuff, but better.
Yeah, it is.
Essentially, if you're going to travel, and it's not the technique that changes, it's the environment that changes. So at level 2, you're riding around on blues and easy reds, and you're riding at speeds that your learners might be riding at. So all we're doing is making the slope steeper, taking the speeds higher, and making the environment more challenging. So more different snow types.
Yeah, makes sense. And I do want to quickly touch upon beforehand the snowboard school video with a K.
Yes.
If you're able to just kind of talk about that before we kind of move on to like the last question of this segment, and just go ahead and talk to me about it.
So again, BASI were very insightful, and they were doing a series of ski how-to videos, and they wanted to do a snowboarding one. Somebody decided that snowboard school was a really cool name, but basically they financed it. And I'd done quite a lot of TV work through my pro riding stuff, so filming TV that didn't faze me at all. So that fell to me. I got all the best jobs, honestly. I seriously did. So we went to Austria for a couple of weeks, and I had some beginners, and I had a co-presenter who'd done a lot of windsurfing instructional videos, and we presented a way of learning to snowboard, which highlighted the BASI system. We made video 1. I don't think there was really much out there at that time. I remember at this time, I was then working for Nitro. I was the brand manager for Nitro Snowboards in the UK. So I was going into loads of retailers like Snow and Rock, all the big retailers and stuff. So I was kind of being able to push that as well. And they loved it because nobody had done it before. And then they made a second one, which started to include some basic freestyle stuff. And they, for a long, long time, they stayed pretty popular and pretty standalone because there really wasn't much else. And certainly not much that worked the same way as our system worked, the whole feet first process.
Yeah,
but really good fun to do.
So because it received really well. Like, where was this kind of displayed? Like, where was these like little videos displayed? Because of course, the World Wide Web would still be pretty new at that age, right? And
through retail, hard copy through retail. So it was VHS video, pretty much all through retail.
Hey, I'd love to see like a VHS copy of that now. I want to find
I will have one somewhere. Not that I have a VHS player to play it on, but I will definitely, like old copies of Bored Stupid, which was Channel 4's snowboard show. And again, because the period that I got into snowboarding was so brand new. I did TV stuff with PJ and Duncan before they were Anton Deck. We did loads of Saturday morning TV, kids TV stuff. Everybody wanted a slice of snowboarding. So there was loads of media stuff back sort of early mid-90s.
God, it's going back, isn't it, with all that. We were watching some really old kind of 80s and 90s videos on YouTube that was kind of converted just to show like snowboarding back then. It was really interesting. I mean, one of the videos was just talking about like the history of Breckenridge resorts and
how that affected
and all the little competitions they had there, and it was really cool to kind of see these really old like cameras and
you forget that snowboarding was growing up. So I remember going to Soldeo in Andorra, and it used to be, before it had the big main cable car that went up from the middle of the village, there used to be an old rickety chairlift and a drag lift. And you had to walk across the bridge, and the queue for the chairlift, it was a massive bottleneck. So I remember going over to the drag lift, and the guy would not let us up on snowboards. He would, because snowboarders would fall off. Which, to be fair to him, probably most of the snowboarders that he ever let on it probably did fall off. We just knew that we weren't going to fall off, but we weren't given the option. In Livigno, when I was back there snowboarding, there was one particular drag lift where they wouldn't let you up on a snowboard. They would give you these little mini ski things that you would strap onto your feet, and you had to carry your snowboard to go up this drag lift, which was infinitely more dangerous than going up on your snowboard. But it was so new to people, they didn't know what to do with it. They didn't know what to make of it. They didn't know what to make of the people. They didn't know what to do with it as a sport.
And when I get to go to the last question regarding this segment, mainly about, of course, interski. You know, I mean, it was a pivotal moment for you to be the first snowboard representative of BASI, especially the British Association, to be at interski. I want to talk about how the origins of that came about and your first impressions.
So, what, of interski generally?
No, but the first time you were snowboard representative mainly, and then we will move on to the interski stuff.
What did I say, it was 99?
Yes.
We went to Beitostølen in Norway, and BASI had never taken a snowboarder before because it was still really new in their system at that point. But we were established enough that we knew where we were with stuff. So we had a team of 12 downhill skiers, alpine skiers, and I was one snowboarder. And I think we did actually have an adaptive rep with us. We had maybe, I can't remember who that was though. Anyway, so there was a massive program set up for the skiers. They had to be here at this time. There were workshops, there were demos, there was a program. And we got there and there was no program for snowboarders. Loads of other countries had snowboard people around, and we were just sort of milling around going, hey, this is nice. And I remember stood at the bottom of the demo slope, just shouting, snowboarders, unite! And we got ourselves together. We decided what we wanted to get out of interski, and we decided to set up workshops. And off we went, and we ran a workshop. So I ran a workshop that was showing different teaching styles. So most people were trying to run workshops that showed how they taught. They were showing us their technical progressions. Our workshop was, I'm going to show you different ways to get people to do stuff that involves some discovery elements rather than just telling. So I set up these activities, and honestly, it blew their minds. They were, you haven't actually told us anything, but we've learned so much. The Italians asked me to come and help deliver their sessions because they wanted to include some of the stuff that I've done. And also in terms of technical, we were the only country at this point who had created this idea of work from the feet up. Like pedaling, it's still in our system. It's still part of what we do. Everybody understands it. Nobody knew what it was. We literally made that up. The people, I was excited to go to Interski because I was looking forward to meeting the Canadians, the Americans, the New Zealanders. I wanted to know what their systems were built on, and they were all built on this. I remember having discussions with either the Canadians or the Americans or someone, and they taught with counter rotation for beginners' turns, for standard turns. But I said, none of your top level riders ride with counter rotation. They went, no, they don't need to. So why do your beginners need it? And then they started questioning themselves. So why teach something that you're going to try and unteach later on?
And it's still, I still find that specifically with the Canadian Association that they don't necessarily still teach foot pedaling in the basic stuff, and it is more of an advanced competency as they call it, and you don't see that. And I've definitely questioned it, and I'm like, why don't we teach the foot pedaling and going from the ground up? Yeah.
You can put a small child on a snowboard and tell them to press their toes down, and they can learn how a board turns. So why keep it for the elite? That made no sense. And yet they first heard about it in 95. So that week really introduced BASI to the snowboard world in terms of instruction. We blew people away. We were doing stuff that other countries hadn't even thought about doing. We did it. We took it there, and we
you owned it. Yeah,
literally leading the world. This whole decision process of the BSA working with BASI and the people that they chose and the experience we brought into it made such an impact. We were doing it so early on compared to other countries. It makes me quite emotional now to think about the position that we were in with a really new young sport. We're the most unlikely country
to do it. Yeah, I know, right?
Of anything.
Compared to other countries, we're just flat.
Sports.
Yeah.
And there we were. It was big. Yeah.
And the overall takeaway from that Interski, coming back with any specific goals in mind from that?
No, but what it did do was it reassured me that the processes we were putting in place were good. The foundations of what we were doing was solid. And that instead of catching up to the rest of the world, we were leading the rest of the world. We were helping create something as opposed to just trying to catch up to other people. My perception had been that all of these other countries would be so far ahead of us because I had no faith in, my knowledge. I was just making the best I could at the time. But to be really reassured that we were doing something good and we'd taken good steps and we were going in a good direction gave me confidence in the organisation that we were moving in the right direction.
Yeah. And it all shows nowadays to everyone who's starting to go through the BASI system and learning it in the snowboard side and getting that understanding is awesome, which is absolutely amazing. So. And can I just say, on behalf of everyone learning, including me and Max, thank you so much for doing this system and making our lives a whole lot easier.
Yeah.
We are eternally grateful.
We are, definitely.
Yeah.
Hugs, boys. Hugs.
Yeah,
virtual hugs, right?
For making a solid structure to everything that makes sense and understanding, and then, but also makes everything passionate as well. And it's just
Yes.
So cool.
Yeah.
Oh, bless you. And long may it continue to develop.
Yeah.
Long may, new things come in and just keep getting better.
Yeah.
Getting better.
Amazing. And you, the second interski you did was in 2015, right? In Argentina.
Yep.
How did you find that? And of course, there must have been this big gap between back then to that 2015.
Yeah.
How did you find the change from that?
Well, do you want the long story or the short story?
Long story.
Yeah, we can go for the long story for sure.
For sure.
Yeah.
From working as a snowboard trainer, eventually sort of moved over to the ski side. So by 2010, 2015, I've been working as a ski trainer for quite a long time. And they were bringing in a system called the QA, the quality assurance. So every 2 years, we go through a cycle where we get tested to make sure that our skiing is up to scratch. So I thought, I probably need to brush up a little bit for this, get prepared, get in the zone. And it was the Interski selection weekend. And I thought, what a great way to go to ski with some really good skiers. They'll push me, that'll get me going for the season. So I went to this selection weekend in Zermatt, thinking, that was lovely, and got selected as reserve for the team. Which, if you think way back to 85, when I'd seen the then Interski team training and how much of a big influence that had on me, to, what did I say, 1985 to 2015 being selected onto the ski team. Yeah, I left it a little while, but I made it in the end. I thought they'd made a mistake. Honestly, I was like, whoa, what are you thinking? I was shocked, honoured, and then felt like I had really big shoes to live up to. When I was part of the team as a snowboarder, I was much more sure of myself and what I brought to it. But I think at that point as a skier, my skiing was okay enough to do what we had to do. But my strength was in the teaching and the presenting skills and a lot of the other stuff that you need for interski as well. To be able to present BASI as a system and to present our core values and our core beliefs. What was one of the amazing things about arriving in Argentina, if you remember, I said I worked in Italy with a load of Argentines. A load of those same people popped up at that Argentinian interski. So the guy at the start of the demo hill was the guy that I used to work in ski school with. I'm like, hi! The guy who trained the Argentine ski demo team was my ski school boss back in Italy all those years ago. So it was wonderful. It was just a wonderful, wonderful thing to be able to do. I'm not sure that anyone has yet been to represent BASI in two different disciplines. We will have had skiers who have also done snowboarding. We will have had skiers who've done telemark and alpine, for sure. We will have had that. But yeah, I don't know if we've had any snowboarders and skiers
at the same time.
I
don't know. I don't think so, especially now that it's like sort of diverging, because I think
it's so far apart now.
Like you'll become
a top level of both is hard.
Because you'll become either do a bit of snowboarding and loving it as a ski instructor, but then really focusing on I want to get my level 4 and that's like sort of your goal, or the other way around.
To have achieved those high levels, you've got to be really old, you see. You just need to have enough time to do it. So that was the second interski. Where were we? I've taken us completely off track.
No, we were on about you kind of just meeting with your Argentinian friends back in the day there.
Oh yeah, blast interski.
But yeah, and how did you feel like when you were doing the demonstration as well with the other BASI members? What was kind of going through your head on that?
I loved it. We had 3 demos. 2 of them I absolutely loved, and 1 of them I absolutely hated.
Why?
Which one was it?
Which one was gone?
It was really scary. And I'd had, in our training weeks, I'd had a couple of things where I'd popped out my bindings, and it given me a real head thing on one. So 2 of our demos started with short term. So they were just really complex short-term things where and it's all about getting yourself into the right place at the right time. And I love those. They were great. And one was just start down the hill. And it's just called, is it snakes? Anyway, and it's just big crosses, high speed crosses, like you 2 lines of people crossing like that. And some of the guys in our, they're big guys. I was like, right. So I got a real head thing at that. So I just stuck on the back of that one, tried to hang on for my dear life. But and that technical fast skiing like that in a group, I love it. It's amazing. It's the biggest buzz.
And what were the kind of like takeaways in terms of the workshops there as well for that interski?
Again, there's so much going on. You don't get to see all of it. You don't get a really good overview. You only get to see the bits that you're allocated to go and see, really. So I didn't attend any really gripping presentations from other countries. But I got to deliver. Me and Paul Garner were delivering our tide model. We were doing a thing about tide, basically. So that's what we delivered. And then just generally out and about meeting people. We ran some on-snow sessions, which again was getting people into different parts of our teaching syllabus. We had loads of different on-snow, some technical stuff, some teaching stuff. And that was all really well received, and just getting into conversations with people. And I think a lot of the countries are now a lot closer. There are a lot more similarities between countries than there were many years ago. It's a real strength, I think.
And it's good to see that kind of closeness, because then we get that industry standard, not just nationally, but internationally. And, you could definitely be speaking about whatever jargon you're on about to someone halfway across the world, and they'll know exactly what you're on about. And that's kind of clearly the main goal we're looking for as an industry.
Oh, and there are definite countries that we have a natural affinity with. All the English-speaking countries, America, US, Australia, New Zealand, they have very similar thought processes in terms of they value the learner, they value the learning process as much as the technical excellence. And I find it really reassuring that BASI goes to an international, worldwide congress about teaching snow sports, and they're really well high regarded, because what we do is really well thought out. It's educationally sound. It's presented well. It's delivered well. We do good stuff. Our system sets people up well.
And what do you see, in your opinion, the future for BASI and just the snow sports industry as a whole? Like, is there anything you kind of want to see in terms of goals wise, in your opinion, on where we are going? I mean, it is a pretty uncertain time at the moment with Brexit.
So BASI as a whole, with all of its disciplines, where is it going? That's a huge question. Huge, because of everything that this last 12 months has brought us. So it's having to deal, as everybody is, with COVID. And they have been able to run quite a few courses this winter. A couple have run in France, particularly some Nordic courses have run in France and cross-country. Switzerland has been a pretty good mainstay, and it's mainly worked for folk who've based themselves out in Europe. So it's not been relying on people coming backwards and forwards from the UK. So it hasn't been recommending and trying to encourage people to do that. it also has to find a way to deal with Brexit and all of those implications. So implications for people to have their qualifications recognised, but also the right to work, which are two completely different things. So BASI can work really hard in making sure that all its qualifications are recognised by as many different countries around the world, but the countries can still decide that you don't have any right to go and work in those countries. And that's not BASI's job. It will help as much as it can, but it's not within BASI's remit. So that's keeping BASI pretty busy at the moment. Snow sports in general, snowboarding. I mean, snowboarding has developed massively, I would say even more in the last decade than probably the whole of the time up till then. So making sure that freestyle, freeride is all part of the big snowboarding family. I think certainly from my era, there was a danger that snowboarding instruction became a separate thing to actually all of the other kind of snowboarding, when actually it's part of the same thing. It's just the first part of the ladder. It's building good fundamentals so that people will be able to they'll have the skills to do all of these other things. Where does it go in terms of climate? I.e., where can you snowboard? Where can you ski? Will the pattern of resorts throughout Europe, through the rest of the world, will that change? Will the big resorts that we know, will they be sustainable in terms of snow height, snow levels? In terms of travel, flying, sustainability from that point of view? I would think, especially in the UK, that snow domes, and I don't know how much of a dry slope scene there is, but certainly from accessibility, dry slope would sound like a logical thing. But for the snow dome culture to keep growing, especially for snowboarding with stuff like park, just the amount of stuff that people can learn on features at home, which is creating a huge amount of success.
Yeah, I can see there being such a big bolstering community, specifically in snow domes in the UK. I mean, look, the dry slope scene is still going really strong, and it's definitely a lot stronger than it has been over the last 5 to 10 years.
Okay.
There's a lot of still talks with new snow domes being built in the UK. You know, you still got the talks of the ones in Bristol they might do. There's also new talks. Yeah, there's the new one that they're thinking about in Wales, which actually might be 400 meters long, which is what was said, and what I know, right? Which is what was said. Yeah, which is what was said and might happen. So you know, there's all still these loads of little thing that's happening for the future of us, which is going to give us Brits, you know, more accessibility to do this stuff, which you know, it's exciting to see.
And there's two sides to that, isn't there? There's the high elite level where snowboarders are going out and making a mark on world level competition, and there's also the accessibility of snow sports being accessible for as many people as possible, because it's an amazing thing to experience. You know, even as a kid, if you've sledged down a hill, it's such an amazing feeling to be able to then take that into some sort of snow sport experience, whether it's ski or snowboard, to be able to share that with people. Yeah, that would be that. The more of that there is, the better.
Yeah. See what the future holds. So let's move on to the next segment in terms of BAS itself. You know, I really want to get to know the origins of BAS and just all about it. So what was the first idea of the creation of BAS?
Yeah, So the original idea involved a guy called Hugh Money, who was a BASI trainer. And his outlook was snow sport teaching needs to change for it to become a viable career for people, because it was one of those things that people would do for a few years and then felt that they needed to leave and go and get a proper job. So by the time me and my still now business partner, Jazz Lamb, joined and set up Bass Morzine Becs, that really worked for us. It was, yes, we want to stay in snow sports. We want to make a life in the mountains, but we also want to have a life, families. I want to actually live somewhere. I from competing and racing, I've been like hand to mouth for so many years. I wanted it to be a job where I could actually earn a living. And on the other side of that, so as well as the instructors having it as a viable income stream, we wanted to do something different than what was traditional ski school. So back then, it was still quite normal to have 10 to 12 people in a group. And the instructor is the one who flounces around at the front going, follow me. And that, for me, that's not where learning is. And that's really what we started with. And it's a very simple concept. The thing that wasn't simple was, if you want to have 4 or 5 or 6 people in your group, it's going to cost a lot more than having 10 or 12. So that was a real leap of faith. Would people pay a premium price to get something that was going to be very, very different? And it turns out they did. They did want to do that. That's what we started with. So trying to offer something better to the people that wanted to come skiing, and also trying to offer a better and more sustainable life for the people that wanted to work in that industry. And I got together with my business partner, Jazz Lamb, and 20 years later, we're still here. To be fair, 21 years later, because we started in 2000. We started here.
Starting on the new millennium.
That's a good idea, actually, yeah.
What could go wrong?
Yeah,
Exactly.
that was good. So why did you, was Morzine the place you wanted to base yourself out of? Because I know you...
Jazz had been working down in Andorra. I had been based here for quite a few years. So I was in partnership with a snowboard chalet company, which kind of gives the name away a bit. They were called Chalet Snowboard, and they were awesome. They allowed me to stay in their cupboard, basically, as a base to return to while I was competing across Europe. So this had very quickly become a home from home for me. I started to have a group of friends here. I started to find a community here. So this was 93, 94, 95 sort of time. So by the time I got into the early 2000s, I'd been here quite a lot. I'd been spending seasons here. So for me, it was the natural place to base. It's got a really wide range of terrain. It's got some, not glacier height, but it's got some rugged stuff. It's got friendly teaching terrain. It's got loads of variety, loads of different areas, super fast access, because we're like 75 minutes from Geneva Airport. The budget flight programs were sort of building and building back then. So it was becoming more available. People were starting to come for more short trips, planning their own trips, not taking the package snow sports holiday, if you like. So it just seemed like a perfect choice. It was much more economical to think about living here than living somewhere like Val d'Isère and Tignes, which any of those areas, which are big, big names, super expensive to try and live in. So it fitted loads of boxes.
And being not too far from the Swiss side as well, you can go over there and have a shred from all the multiple resorts around there as well. I'm guessing that was like such a big...
Exactly. Our the Port du Soleil runs through loads of different resorts, so it's absolutely massive. And I have to say, 2021 has been a bit of a bonus being close to a Swiss
Yeah.
resort. I'll say no more. Say no more.
For sure.
But it means we've been able to ride, we've been able to coach, we've been able to work. Certainly not with holidaymakers, but who are in the BASI system, who are working towards professional exams, they've been able to carry on working, and that's amazing.
This is where you're like, I'm so glad the EU didn't bully the Swiss government to close the ski resorts.
Yeah, but nobody knew from week to week whether it would happen. All season, you're kind of on tenterhooks thinking, what is going to happen? So, yeah, Jazz and I set up here 2000, 2001. So we have a general holidaymakers offering, which is all about small groups, individual learning. It's about being able to communicate with people in a way that they get the subtlety of what we're talking about. It also means we can understand the subtlety of what's going on for them. We also, BAS is a business partner to BASI. So we run BASI courses here under license. So it basically takes the admin strain off BASI. It means there's a hub here in the Port du Soleil where people can come and do courses throughout the winter. And then the third arm of what we do is we have BAS Pro Training. So the Pro Training is a training system. It's not even a system. It's a holistic approach to supporting people working through the BASI system, the qualification system. So our team of teachers here are all level 4s. And currently, 5 of us are also ski trainers as well. Between us, we have loads of different disciplines. We've got telemarkers, we've got snowboarders, we've got adaptive. It makes me sound like we have loads of instructors. We just have instructors who have loads of different hats. Skilled and more hats than instructors. But the pro program is really quite special because it's a community. You know some of the guys that come out to train with us. They are so supportive of each other as a group, plus the support that we're able to build in for them as an organisation. So within our skill set, we have the teaching stuff, we have the technical stuff, we have the touring, the mountain safety, the language, all of these extra bits. But we also have folk in our team who are helping some of the folks sort out their residency cards, getting through all the legal stuff. It's huge. And yeah, the team that we have now, we're a small team, but there's such a wide range of skills they're able to offer as support for people coming through. It's good.
I think that's such a great USP because I'm guessing you get loads of instructors who especially want to kind of get their higher level in qualifications, and they know their what to do in terms of the modules, but not the other side of how to apply for residency, what's the best option to go through, the process behind that. Because I can see that, specifically in my kind of view, it can be very complicated, and it can be very kind of stressful if you don't have that guidance towards it.
Hugely stressful. And to be truthful, nobody really knows. But one of my colleagues, Tom, is amazing because he will go and find out, and he'll get on the phone to the right people. And whether it's about getting your Kart Pro or your Kart Pro renewed or your this, that, the other, or he's on it. And he's like a bulldog. He won't let go until he's found the answer or found the right person to speak to. And it's not something I'm particularly good at. I love having that kind of support. So it's a pretty special team, and it's a team of people that You know, I was saying before, coming through the system, what was really valuable to me was having a team of people that were all inspired to get better. And we don't spend all day, every day talking about lessons, but you do come off the hill and chat and go, yeah, if you've got an idea, I've never seen this thing, or I've run out of new ideas to deal with this thing. And the collaboration with other people who are very good and very experienced at what they do, with the inspiration that gives you to keep wanting to get better at what you do, is such exciting is not a good enough word for it, but it's makes it such a motivating community to be part of.
Inspiring.
Yeah.
Thank you. Inspire.
I get that quite a lot in the film industry when working with, because it's such a collaborative effort that you get with people who are like just as like-minded and know the stuff and know the industry, and you just have this great kind of passion with it, and it just helps motivate you even more with carrying on, and it just makes the whole goal and the end of that even better than it originally was if you were to do that by yourself, right?
Yes, and I think when you talk about your field, because it's a creative field, and actually teaching and sport are both really creative things. They're not, neither of them you can do by numbers. If you're a mechanic, there are certain steps and processes that you have to do to make a piece of machinery work. Whereas you get two creative things and then a bunch of creative people, and creativity itself is inspiring, isn't it? And I think if I was doing the same thing day in, day out, if I was using the same drills and exercises that I was when I passed my level 4, grade 1, level 4, my mind would have exploded by now. But here I am, 30 something years. Did I say that out loud? But I still feel challenged by going and teaching stuff.
Yeah.
Be it ski, snowboard, whatever.
Yeah. And kind of moving on to the last question, before we really go for the final thoughts, I do want to touch upon your little kind of side project of the escape rooms.
Side hustle,
yeah.
Yes, it wasn't my idea. So there are a team of 4 of us, and we had this big office space, so we decided to put it to good use. And we built an escape room. So for me, it was a real baptism of fire. I was like, an escape what? They're becoming really popular in France. I think there are loads through the UK as well.
Tons.
Really,
There's tons in the UK, it's so ridiculous. Much.
Right, well, I don't think we're anywhere near saturated. We're certainly the only one in Morzine. The closest ones that I know of are Tonon, maybe 20 minutes away, Chamonix an hour away, so not loads. We built it deliberately to be easily switched from French to English, so it can work. There's very few things that we need to change for it to be suitable for French players or English players. So we've built one small one, which is for teams up to 6. It's called the Villain's Lair. And we're currently in build of a second one, which will be an 8-player game. So hopefully by the time that we come out of lockdown and are able to open up again, we should have 2 games running. So we haven't put enough people through yet to think about even changing the first game, still working on the second one. So it's still very new, it's still very young for us. But yeah, I like a challenge.
Yeah,
cool.
How are you finding it so far, just with kind of doing the building, the process of making an escape room
and being creative as well?
And the actual build are one person's department, so we just help. Through BAS and through this, my role is largely operations, so I'll be the one creating the booking system and doing front of house and stuff like that. So the technical build,
Yeah.
and if anything ever goes wrong, I'm like, I've got the magnet stuck on the. Yeah, not my forte. I will have to admit that that's where having a team around you works. But it's honestly it's just fascinating, and it's fascinating watching people play. So as you're running the game, you're obviously watching people in there. You're helping guide them through. So as a customer experience, you want them to see as much of the game as possible, even if they're not going to be able to escape. For them to only get halfway through the game just leaves them disappointed and flat. So you're trying to manage it in a way that they can have the best experience, but it does make you laugh. Make me laugh. So that's good fun, and that's in the centre of Morzine, and that is called Le Room.
Le
You see what it's there?
Very
Le
cool.
Room.
That's awesome. I think I remember doing like an escape room only once with them. This is when we were kids. And I vividly remember the first thing was getting through this door, and that everyone was spending ages just trying to like type in this code, like trying to be like, oh, how do we open the door? And the guy who was doing it just went, oh, you know how to open the door? You just push it. And everyone was just like, what?
Sometimes the most obvious simple just get missed. It's brilliant.
Oh, it's amazing.
My girlfriend absolutely loves escape rooms, and she does
Really?
so many of them. I need to get into them and have a go and see if any of my knowledge helps within that field. But
there will always be something in there that
challenged you.
Works for different types of people. Like if there were the two of you playing it, there'd be one of you going, this stuff will make sense, and the other you going, this will make sense. And it's wonderful sometimes watching families or groups of people, and when you see the dynamic between them. That can be
honestly,
amazing.
I think I'll be on the other side. I think I just prefer just watching people just try and have a go, because that sounds like absolute entertainment right there.
Well, when you finally get yourselves over here, we'll have to get you in there.
Without a doubt, we're going to be doing it.
Well, if anyone tries to give us any secrets, we'll just block them out and just be like, no, we
want to do this.
Yeah.
First.
Yes,
That's the
you
experience.
know people that have played it.
Yeah, definitely.
To be honest, you can play it and still not know all the answers to the puzzle.
No. Would it be like so cool coming it from like looking at an escape room and owning an escape room from a ski instructor's perspective and using like, you know, sort of, are they sort of how they teach, like how they're doing it, and you're like, it's like, are they a bit more commanding, or a bit more? Most of it will be guided discovery. I suggest that like you sort of go, sort of lead them to that track. Maybe this will work. Maybe this won't. Or is it different?
There is a natural dynamic. So some people will be keen to collaborate. Some people won't. Some people will be keen to listen. Some people just want to tell stuff. And you can immediately see attributes that would work as an instructor and some that maybe not quite so desirable.
Oh, that's great. And kind of going from that, let's talk about the final thoughts, Beck. You know, so what makes, in your opinion, a great snowboard instructor?
For me, the starting point is empathy. Someone who is able to put themselves in the shoes of another, to be able to understand what that person might be experiencing. And empathy being very different to sympathy. You know, it's that ability to relate to what that person is experiencing. So that's a huge starting point. And then I think it's someone who's prepared to spend the time really listening to their learners. And that goes beyond, hi, how are you? What would you like to do today? And then listening to their answer. It's about being willing to create a relationship that's based in trust, and then taking that listening role and sometimes having to read between the lines, because people don't always know how to express what they feel or how they're feeling about something. So it's being able to read emotionally and listen and hear all the messages that are coming to you to actually work out what it is that's challenging each learner. And then layer on top a really deep knowledge of learning, what learning's all about. And then on top of that, you put some technical understanding about your sport. If you can put all of those things in place in that order, then you've got someone who will nurture another person. And that, for me, that's what teaching anything. And if you can teach snowboarding, because snowboarding is your sport, learn something about another sport, take all of the other stuff that you took about being a snowboard instructor and layer it onto that other sport. Boom.
Boom. Easy.
Or even then, just another subject, because I teach music and I do so much that I learned from snowboard instructing and just transition it onto that, like tide model, everything. I'm just like, throw it into there and it's awesome.
I think I love it. So I, in the latter years, have got involved with a couple of things. Netball, never played netball apart from at school. I can do some coaching in netball, not because I'm a brilliant netball player, but because I understand coaching. And theatre. So I now get involved with theatre groups and teaching kids and supporting. And it's called Madhouse. It's a huge organisation that's run for kids here in the Valley. And I just help out on the fringes. But I get it because I understand teaching and coaching. The theatre bit, I can learn as I go along, you know, the singing, the dancing, the acting. But yeah, the creating relationships, that's what being human is about, isn't it? Be a good human. That's what kids do.
Yeah.
Be a good human.
But even then, like, as you see, like, for example, a kid singing on stage, you've seen them do the same song, and doing it absolutely amazing. But when they do it on stage, they're now scared. And you're like, okay, this is psychological.
Yes. It's not always about the technical. The technical's important, but it's not always priority. For me, especially with snow sport, ski or snowboard, it's about coaching someone so that they have the knowledge to make good decisions for themselves. They know what is a safe speed for them to go. They know how to create that. They know that if the terrain changes, they can do this instead of that. It's not about learning a certain type of technique. It's about trusting and being able to make decisions so they can be independent, safe, flourish.
Oh, that's great. And we'll leave it at that in terms of, I mean, Alec will edit this out, but we did have a bit of an unstable connection, which is fine. But yeah, that's great. I mean, that's perfect. Where can we find you, Bex? Plug yourself in.
Yeah, you can find me in loads of places with one of my many different hats. You can find me at britishskischool.com. From there, you can find all our Facebook, our Insta, and what have you. You can find us at protraining.com, which is our training community. You can find us on Facebook, Bass Morzine and Leger, and you can find the escape room at leroom.com.
Love it.
Yeah.
Amazing. But yeah, thanks so much for this amazing episode. It's awesome. And yeah.
Thank you. It's got me really excited thinking about loads of things and you know, and I'm talking to snowboarders for completely generational. But again, we have to comment and we do that. you.